For many of us, Capital One cards are one of the first cards that we get. I remember seeing Samuel Jackson's face all over TV asking me, what's in my wallet? I got a Quicksilver card, and for about a year, that was the only card I was using until I switched up to other cards. Capital One cards are great cards to get when you are first starting off in your credit card journey, because not only are they easier to get approved for, but they also have good cards, and then later on down the line, it can actually end up being more challenging to get approved for a Capital One card. Lately, I've been recommending Capital One cards for people who are just beginning in the credit card game more than any other issuer. And the reason for this is because I find that Capital One cards are great for people who are either beginners or experts in the points and miles game. The Capital One card that you get today, you still end up being really valuable and one that you'll keep on your wallet 3 or 4 years into the future. Whereas with some other beginner cards, you'll probably end up seeing them being really valuable when you first end up getting them, but even just 2 years down the line, you may never even use that card again. In this video, I'm gonna first start off by going over why the Capital One Duo is so amazing. Then I'm gonna tell you about my journey with Capital One, and then I'm gonna end off the video by showing you how you can redeem your Capital One Venture Miles for incredible value. So first, let's start off with the Capital One Duo. Now, Capital One has a great 2-card setup. If you look at most other banks out there, they have a 3-card setup that people will call a trifecta, where what will end up happening is that if you end up getting these 3 cards and you end up rotating them when it comes to putting the best card for the category spend, then you can end up getting the max return from having those 3 cards. But with Capital One, they have a 2-card setup that ends up beating out most other banks' 3-card setups. Now, you could obviously get different cards from multiple different banks to be able to maximize the return, but most people out there don't want to have many different issuers that they're connected to. They just want simplicity, and simplicity would end up being just having one issuer that can end up giving you a good return. And with Capital One, this ends up being the best option out there for the vast majority of people. And the 2-card setup with Capital One is having the Capital One Saver card and the Capital One Venture X card. The Saver card is arguably the best no annual fee card in the credit card space. This card gives you 3x back at dining, 3x back at the grocery store, 3x back on streaming, and then 3x back on entertainment purchases. These are all pretty strong categories to get 3x back on. Getting 3x back on dining and on groceries is huge. In fact, I can't think of another no annual fee card out there that gives you 3x back on dining and on groceries. And if there is another card out there that does, then this card doesn't have the ability to grab that 3x back category and make it into becoming a transferable currency. I'll get into more of that later on in the video. The 3x back on streaming used to be a small category. But if you talk to people lately, you realize that they have like 6 or 7 streaming services that would cost more than just having cable by itself. And the 3x back on entertainment is just the cherry on top, because the entertainment category is pretty broad. I mean, this covers things like concerts or movie theaters or sporting events. So if you happen to be a Chiefs fan and you spent $5,000 to go to the Super Bowl, well, guess what? You would have been able to get yourself 15,000 points, which would have ended up being 14,994 points more than what the Chiefs had going into the 4th quarter. And if you happen to be booking through Capital One Entertainment, you get 8x back on those purchases. Another great thing about this card is that it has no foreign transaction fees. There are very few no annual fee cards that also have no foreign transaction fees. And since this is a MasterCard, it will be accepted all around the world where people accept credit cards, unless you happen to go to Costco. But to pair with the Saver card that is a Visa card that you could use at Costco is going to be the Capital One Venture X card. Now, this card is a noticeably different card. Not just because the cards look completely different, but because these cards do not have overlapping categories, plus also the Venture X card has a $395 annual fee, whereas the Saver card has no annual fee. The Venture X card earns miles, whereas technically the Saver card earns cash back, but if you happen to be pairing the Venture X card with the Saver card, then you can convert that cash back into being miles. This is important because Venture Miles can be a lot more valuable than cash back when they are redeemed correctly. And I'm gonna get into more detail about that later on in the video. Now, while the Venture X card does have a much larger annual fee, Capital One does a great job to help you easily offset the annual fee. They give you a $300 travel credit on your first $300 spent through Capital One's travel portal, and then they give you 10,000 Venture Miles every anniversary of keeping this card open. So if you just do one $300 travel purchase through Capital One's travel portal, and then also you redeem the 10,000 Venture Miles for just a penny each, you're gonna get yourself $400 in value for this $395 annual fee card. To me, that is an easy trade-off. But Capital One doesn't just leave it there, because they also offer you Priority Pass lounge access and access to the Capital One lounges. There isn't an easier or cheaper way to get access to airport lounges than getting yourself the Capital One Venture X card. I guess you could say the cheaper way would end up being to be an authorized user to the Capital One Venture X card, which Capital One allows you to do for 4 people with no additional charge. If you look at both Chase and American Express's premium cards, they have a fee if you decide to add an authorized user. So this is where Capital One easily beats out those programs. And when it comes to earnings with the Capital One Venture X card, you get 2x back on all of your purchases. You can get a higher multiplier if you decide to make bookings through Capital One's travel portal, giving you 5x back on flights booked through Capital One's travel portal, and then 10x back on hotels and car rentals booked through Capital One's travel portal. And with this being a travel card, this card also has no foreign transaction fee, making this card the perfect one to pair with the Savor One card to travel around the world with. You use the Savor card for your dining, streaming, groceries, and entertainment purchases, and then use your Venture X card for all of your other purchases. I can't think of a stronger set of cards that can beat out the Capital One Duo. And if you happen to be interested in either one of these cards, I will have referral links in the description box down below. If you do decide to use either one of my links, it does really help out the channel, and it'll be incredible for anyone's support. Now there's even more perks that I didn't even go over with these cards, such as like the 0 APR intro offer with the Savor card, or the travel protections and car rental status with the Venture X card. Now some of you may be like, okay, I am sold. I'm going to go apply for the Capital One Venture X card and then also the Savor One card. And I recommend, if you don't happen to have these cards, to go get these cards. However, depending on where you are in your credit card journey, may end up determining whether or not Capital One will end up approving you for one of these cards. And this is why I want to go over my journey with Capital One. I'm going to go over how to maximize your venture miles in just a little bit, but first let me tell you about my journey to help people better understand how Capital One works. So the first Capital One card I got was the Quicksilver card. And this card I use as one of my main cards for close to about a year. Now the Quicksilver card that I got actually had an annual fee because when I applied for the Quicksilver card, I didn't realize that there was many different options of Quicksilver cards. There's a Quicksilver card for excellent credit and good credit and fair credit. So I just applied for a Quicksilver card, and since I always look at my statement, I saw that there was an annual fee put on there. However, when I did end up calling up Capital One and told them that I didn't want to have to pay an annual fee, they did end up waiving it that year and every single other year that I called up. Eventually, I did end up canceling the card because it just didn't have any use in my wallet. Calling and asking for an annual fee to be waived or a retention offer can end up working out for a lot of different issuers. However, I will say that this will not work if you happen to get the Venture X card, so don't be expecting that. Now after that Quicksilver card, I got another Quicksilver card, this time being the one that has no annual fee and also offered 0 APR for the first 15 months of having it. That was actually the main reason why I got the card, so I could end up just taking advantage of the 0 APR and then just investing my other money, and then right before it was time to pay off, I just grabbed my money out of the stock market and then just pay off the debt that I had. Now I am not recommending everyone do this because 1, I am not a financial advisor, and 2, the market can end up fluctuating, so if you do end up trying out this trick and the market ends up going down, well, you're gonna have to pull out the money, and if you don't have the remaining money to be able to pay off the card, now you're gonna have to pay all that high level interest. But I'm just letting you know what I did when I got the card. And then after that, I got the original Savor card. Now, Capital One did a revamp to their Savor lineup. They used to have a Savor card and a Savor One card. The Savor card used to have an annual fee, and the Savor One card used to have no annual fee. However, they got rid of the Savor card, and then they turned the name of the Savor One card that has no annual fee into now being the Savor card. It's kind of confusing, but that's just how they went about it. So I had the original Savor card that I applied for, and I got this card because I wanted to get the $500 sign-up bonus that was connected to it at the time I applied. This card was a strong earner card, giving you 4x back in a bunch of different categories. However, at the time of getting this card, I really wasn't into any annual fee cards. So after a year of having the card, I did try to see if they would be able to waive the annual fee when it came around. They said that they wouldn't. So I downgraded myself to which was the Savor One card that now is known as the Savor card. So at this point in my Capital One journey, I had the Quicksilver card with no annual fee and also the Savor One card with no annual fee. Now at this time, this is when I was beginning to do a lot of research on doing award travel. And even though I saw that I could transfer points with other programs, with Venture Miles, this ended up being a way where I could cover different travel costs that wasn't gonna end up being covered from transferring points. So this is when I decided to get the original Capital One Venture card. It had a 50,000 mile welcome offer that could be redeemed for $500 towards travel purchases. And I remember at this time, before even applying for the card, I was reading that you weren't allowed to have more than 2 Capital One cards. So what I decided to do, for some dumb reason, was I decided to cancel my Savor One card because I told myself, since I didn't already get the bonus for that card, I'll just later on apply for the card and then get the $200 bonus that usually comes with the Savor One card. So I canceled my Saver One card, applied for the Venture card, and got approved for the Venture card. Looking back at it, obviously canceling the Saver One card over the Quicksilver card was pretty dumb, but at the time, I somehow justified it, making it make sense, so that's the reason why I ended up doing that. So after I used up all of my Venture miles with my Venture card, I downgraded that Venture card to a no annual fee Venture One card. And you have to remember that at this time, Capital One only had the Venture card and the Venture One card as their travel cards. And when it came to their miles were not transferable currencies at this time. They were essentially cash back. However, the cash back could only really be used for travel purchases because if you used it to redeem on anything else, then you got severely penalized. So at this time, I didn't see Capital One cards as being overly valuable, but not too much later, the Venture X card dropped. And this card changed the game. This is a card that was a luxury travel credit card that was cheaper than the American Express Platinum card and cheaper than the Chase Sapphire Reserve card, and this card also had transferable currencies. This made Capital One miles so much more valuable. And then when people realized that you could actually grab onto the cash back from either the Saver or the Saver One card and convert it at a 1 cent to 1 mile ratio over to being Venture miles as long as you had a Venture card, this made Capital One incredibly competitive and also made me realize how dumb I was to cancel the Saver One card. So immediately I decided to cancel my Quicksilver card to open up a slot so I could apply for the Venture X card. And I applied for it and got denied for it. About 8 months later, I again applied for the Venture X card, and again, I got denied for the Venture X card. At this point, my credit history was pretty deep. As I said at the top of this video, Capital One cards can end up being really hard to get approved for later on down the line in your credit card journey. Capital One does this because they know that when people first start using cards, they only tend to use one card. So if you end up only having the Capital One card, Capital One can make a lot of money from you. Also, with people who are just starting off, they tend to make mistakes such as missed payments or late payments, or they end up paying interest because they end up being in debt. This is all ways for Capital One to make money off of you. Now, about a year after I got denied, I decided that this was time for me to again try to apply for the Capital One Venture X card. I remember seeing in my account that with my Venture One card that I had the ability to upgrade to getting the Venture X card. However, I wouldn't have gotten a welcome offer if I decided to do that. So what I told myself was, I'm going to try at least one more time to get the Venture X card, and if I do end up getting denied, because I want to have that card so bad, I'll just upgrade my Venture One card into being a Venture X card just so I can end up having it in my wallet. But fortunately for me, on my third try of applying for the Capital One Venture X card, I got approved for it and got 75,000 Venture miles as a welcome offer. So it took me almost 2 years from when the card first launched. But eventually, I got approved for the Capital One Venture X card. And I just wanted to tell the story because I've spoken with a lot of people who've been denied for a Capital One card. And what ends up happening is that these people tend to shun away this issuer because, well, they just don't like being rejected. But what I would say to that is, keep on trying. Because you may end up being denied the first, second, and possibly even third time. However, if you do end up getting approved on the fourth time, you are going to end up being happy because Capital One has excellent cards. I don't know anyone who doesn't like Capital One that has Capital One cards. Everyone that I see that hates on Capital One is because they can't get a Capital One card. Now, after getting the Venture X card, I wanted to again get the Saver One card. So what I did was I looked at my upgrade offers with my Venture One card and saw that I had an upgrade offer to a Quicksilver card. So I decided to just upgrade it to the Quicksilver card in hopes that from my Quicksilver card, I could get an upgrade to the Saver One card. Now, I didn't want to just apply straight out for the Saver One card, not because I didn't want to have the card, but because of the time of where I was with my 524 status, I was working on even higher welcome offers that would have outweighed me getting the Saver One card, so I decided not to just apply directly for the Saver One card. The $200 bonus that I could get from the Saver One card as compared to a 90,000 ink bonus just wasn't comparable. However, with the Quicksilver card, for the longest time, I didn't end up seeing an upgrade offer to getting the Saver One card. I did try calling up Capital One, but Capital One would say you have to end up seeing the offer in your account for you to actually be able to product change to the other card. As compared to with other issuers, you can usually end up just easily product changing between different cards. Heck, even with Citi, you can end up grabbing onto co-branded cards and product change to other cards within their lineup. But Capital One only allows it for certain times where you can product change one card to another card. And for over a year, I didn't end up seeing an upgrade offer for the Saver One card with my Quicksilver card. Now, it wasn't all doom and gloom because at this time, I did have my American Express Gold card that was giving me 4x back on dining and 4x back on groceries. So I was perfectly happy with that card and also earning more points. But there was instances where I wanted to cancel my Gold card, but I just didn't have a good replacement card, which the Saver One card would have been good for. However, just last week, I went into the Capital One app and looked at my Quicksilver card and saw that there was an upgrade offer to the Saver, formerly the Saver One card. I immediately jumped on the offer, and now I'm currently just waiting for the card to arrive in the mail. So if I ever decide to cancel my American Express Gold card, I now have a perfect replacement that has no annual fee, being the Saver card. Capital One doesn't make it easy, but if you can get the Venture X card and the Saver card, you have a beast of a lineup. So now that I've done a breakdown of the two cards and also went over my journey with Capital One, I want to show you how you can redeem the points that you get with Capital One for great value. Now, Capital One calls their points Venture Miles, and Venture Miles can be redeemed a number of different ways. Most of the ways are terrible, some of the ways aren't bad, but there's a few ways that are pretty awesome. Redeeming your Venture Miles for under 1 cent per point would be considered terrible value for your points. So if you happen to be redeeming your Venture Miles for, say, gift cards or with Amazon or PayPal or non-travel statement credits, all of these would be considered terrible redemptions for your points. So if you've ever done this before, please stop doing it now, unless you like trading $1 for 3/4. You can redeem your Venture Miles for travel statement credits, which I did do in the past before Venture Miles became a transferable currency, and what you'll get from that will end up being 1 Venture Mile equaling out to 1 penny. So if you happen to have 10,000 Venture Miles, you get yourself $100 towards travel statement credits. Now, this wouldn't be considered a good way of redeeming your points, but it also wouldn't be considered a terrible way to redeem your points. This is pretty much the base level of redeeming your points. But you can do a lot better than that with your Capital One Venture Miles. And one of the ways you can get yourself outsized value, which is one that I actually haven't booked before, however, I have found availability for it, so I do know that it does work. And this ends up being to redeem your Venture Miles to book baseball seats. Now, not every seat is created equal, so don't automatically think that if you redeem your Venture Miles for some of these baseball seats, you're automatically going to be getting good value for your miles. However, Capital One does release a couple of good baseball seats that if you end up looking at the sticker cost for, end up being like a few $100s, and the miles required would end up giving you well above 1 cent per point. So because of that, if you can end up finding those good baseball seats when redeeming your Venture Miles, then this can end up being a good value redemption. But the way that I and other people who are deep in the points and miles game redeem our Venture Miles for really good value is by transferring them over to the transfer partners that are connected to Capital One. Capital One has a bunch of different transfer partners. Some of them are really good, like British Airways, and others are not so good, such as like their hotel programs. And when I say that their hotel programs aren't very good, I don't mean that these are actually bad hotel programs. I just mean that the value for your Venture Miles isn't going to go very far transferring over your Venture Miles to these programs. But there are some great airline programs that I do recommend to transfer over to with Capital One. Now, I know for most people, the topic of transfer partners is very confusing. So if you want to get better at taking advantage of transfer partners, go to pointstravel101.com and purchase my course. I created a course to help people feel really confident with booking business and first class flights around the world. If you want to become one of those people and make your miles go way further, purchase my course because once you complete it, it's going to end up giving you a ton of value. But to help make you understand transfer partners a little bit easier for this video, just know that with your miles transferring over to many of these different airlines, instead of your miles only being 1 cent per mile, you can have your miles become as valuable as 3, 4, 5, or even 10 cents per mile with the correct award booking. I'm going to go over a few ways that I've redeemed my Venture Miles. And the examples that I'm going to be showing here are either going to be ones that I've booked or ones that I've already booked and taken. One thing that you'll see online is that there's a lot of talk about things that are possibilities. However, if you've never even booked the flight or even found the award availability, then I don't like hearing about possibilities because there ends up being things that people may recommend that could end up taking 50 hours to find and only end up saving you $50. I don't want to do that. I want to go over awards that I know truly work, either because I've taken these award trips myself or that I found them and I have booked them and I'm hoping to be taking them sometime in the near future. So one of the awards that I booked with my Capital One Venture Miles was with Singapore Airlines. Singapore Airlines is a transfer partner of Capital One, and you can transfer your Venture Miles at a 1-to-1 ratio. I booked a business class flight on Singapore Airlines from Hong Kong over to Singapore, and this business class flight cost me 34,000 KrisFlyer miles. To me, I thought this was a good deal, because a business class flight one way would be around $1,400 and round trip would be close to like $2,500. So being able to book this business class flight for only 34,000 Venture Miles is a deal that I'm happy to take. Another transfer partner connected to Capital One that I really like ends up being Aeroplan. Now I've transferred points from my Capital One Venture account over to Aeroplan for a few different award flights. But the one that I want to highlight right now is one that I have booked but I've yet to take, and this is going to be a business class flight with EVA Air. EVA Air is a Taiwanese airline that is partnered with Aeroplan, and you can redeem your Aeroplan miles to book a business class flight from the US over to Taiwan for only 75,000 Aeroplan miles. And if you want to connect in Taipei and go to somewhere else in Southeast Asia, well, you can go over to Thailand or over to Vietnam for only 87,500 Aeroplan miles. And that would all be in business class. Aeroplan is partnered with more airlines than any other program out there. So if you are looking for sweet spots with redeeming your miles, chances are you're probably gonna be able to find one with Aeroplan. So if you sign up for the Capital One Venture X card and also the Saver card, you got approved for both of those cards and hit the minimum spend for the welcome offer, well, you could be able to book a business class flight to pretty much anywhere in the world. Now I know that for some people, as soon as I begin to talk about taking business class flights to faraway places, their brain immediately shuts off because they have no desire to do that. And I completely understand. If you're someone who wants to travel around the US, however you want to get yourself good value for your venture miles, you still can be able to do that. Just know that when you are redeeming your miles for domestic travel, they're not going to be as valuable because domestic travel isn't as expensive as international travel. The most expensive domestic commercial flight that I can think of would be to fly across country with American Airlines in first class. Now this flight, I've never seen round trip exceed $4,000. Whereas a business class flight one way over the ocean could end up being over $4,000. So because of this, it can be really hard to get yourself a high cents per point value when you are redeeming for domestic travel. But it doesn't mean that there isn't some sweet spots, and I'll go over those right now. So say you want to travel across the country with JetBlue Mint. I've seen flights from Los Angeles to New York ranging from $700 all the way up to $1,300 each way. Now, a program that's partnered with JetBlue that also is a transfer partner of Capital One is Etihad. And Etihad allows you to book this business class flight from Los Angeles to New York for 50,000 points. Now, while this isn't a steal of a deal, this is cheaper than I've ever seen JetBlue charge it for their own program. And also, Etihad sometimes has transfer bonuses with Capital One. In fact, last year they had a 40% transfer bonus with Capital One, which would mean that if you took advantage of that, it would have cost you 36,000 venture miles to be able to book this business class flight from Los Angeles over to New York. Now that to me is a steal of a deal. I love JetBlue Mint, and if I could book this for only 36,000 points, I would do this all day, every day. Now, if you are someone who doesn't care about business class flights over to Asia or business class flights across the US, you just want to be able to book some economy flights and get good value for your points, well, you still can do that with your venture miles, but you just have to do it when the cash cost is high. And typically this ends up happening under a month before departure. So say you happen to need to get from Boston over to Los Angeles, you don't care about business class, you just want to be able to redeem as low as miles as you can for the best deal that you can get. Well, this is when you would want to use something like Aeroplan to be able to book a United flight, and instead of having to pay, say, close to $300, it would only end up costing you 12,500 Aeroplan miles plus about like $50 in Canadian taxes and fees. So after subtracting the taxes, you're going to be getting right around 2 cents per point, which is actually really good when it comes to domestic economy flights. So if you're someone who only wants to fly domestic economy, don't think that you can't get good value for your venture miles. You are going to have to learn about transfer partners, but once you start to get the hang of that, you're going to begin to see yourself getting good value. The Capital One Duo covers everything. Their cards earn well, they have no foreign transaction fees. Sure, the Venture X card does have an annual fee, however, the one credit that you need to use to help offset it is very easy to take advantage of. And you also get access to the Priority Pass lounges and the Capital One lounge. I mean, what more could you ask for from Capital One? The Venture X Duo is the best in the game. So if you are someone who is a beginner or a more advanced player, you're going to want to add this to your wallet. But hopefully you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comment section down below, what are your thoughts about Capital One and the Capital One Duo? Are you someone who has this in your wallet, or are you someone who wants to get it but can't because Capital One isn't approving you for their cards? Now, if you happen to have any questions, you can drop it down in the comment section down below. I'll do the best I can to answer it. If you happen to be interested in any cards, check out my links in the description box. If you do decide to use any of my links, it does really help out the channel, and I'll be incredibly thankful for your support. And if you want to become a Points Miles booking expert, remember to go to Points Travel 101 to purchase my course so you can begin to start feeling confident with booking business and first class flights all over the globe. And if you happen to really like this video, do me a favor. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share this video, and have a beautiful rest of your day.